Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So, as the topic unfolded on me, and I was thinking how to position this, what we are going to talk about in the next 20-25 minutes is affects our today, but even more so affects our tomorrow. And I thought, what better than to possibly talk about it with the finest young leaders of this country? And I'm privileged to have the opportunity to speak to Samad on the topic. The topic is what we call Society 5.0 and its impact on societies in general and the kind of social transformation it begins. We all understand, and I don't think anyone in this room, and possibly if we go out, can disagree that the change that is coming in or has come in has been relentless, aggressive, ruthless. And if we don't understand this, and if we are not willing to adapt to the pace of the change, tomorrow will become doubtful. And that's the significance of Society 5.0. We have moved from centuries, from hunting societies to farming societies to industrial societies to information societies, and now we are talking about super smart societies. But interestingly enough, uh, information society is something we've been talking about only a few months ago. And we were saying, are we ready for it or not? Because we are still rooted in the brick and mortar society rather than the digital society and the thought to evolve towards it. Uh, so hence, this topic is not just important. I think it's so cardinal to understand where we are, how we have evolved, and how it will manifest in various ways into the future. So, Samad, let's just start off, with giving audience an overview of how societies have evolved from the hunting to the super smart, and then we take it from there, touching various aspects of how it affects today and tomorrow. So, over to you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be here, to Asfar and all my colleagues over here. So first of all, I'm not an expert in this field. I'm just a humble student, and it is my intent to just share some of my learnings with you all. So I think you framed the question really well in terms of how society has evolved. And one of the things that you touched upon is going from hunter-gatherers to agriculture to industrial information and now smart societies. All of these, the pace of change, the time duration where these societies existed has been shrinking. So we had hunter-gatherers for 2.2 million years or 2 million years as Australopithecus came in. Then you've got farming societies lasted 5,000 years. You've got industrial societies, 250 years. Now you've got information society was back in the 80s, 90s, and now we're already talking about smart. So you can see the pace of acceleration of change is absolutely enormous. And if you took somebody from 2,000 years ago and then brought them to 1,000 years ago, they won't see too much of a change. If you brought somebody from 100 years ago to today, the world as we see it would be barely recognizable. So the pace of change keeps on increasing. But one thing which has remained the same, at least in my view, is that all of this change has been based on fundamentally hacking human ingenuity and creativity. And what you see is individuals and teams, they create new products, they create new capabilities, and then society organizes itself in order to scale those up by developing systems of trust. So when you went from hunter-gatherers to agriculture, that was a profound change because people settled down. And the way it changed organization was that cities got built, right? And then infrastructure got built, laws came in, property rights came in. So society had to evolve in order to take the benefit of increased productivity by controlling more of the natural ecosystem through farming. Similar with Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, we had the age of empires, and because you had the British Empire coming up with the steam engine, they had a footprint over 25% of the world. Their ability to use that empire, that footprint, in order to create global supply chains and then scale up that industrialization, which got mimicked by other colonial powers and then hence going into developed countries. Again, that was fundamental in terms of the way society and politics were arranging in order to scale up those innovations. Moving over to the information age, again, we've got issues in terms of data laws, how they have come in, global corporation, multilateral corporations, that have facilitated, and the way the global society again has organized, trade routes have organized, coming up with the WTO, all of these things have come together. And now when we're talking about smart cities, there are a whole bunch of questions which are being raised, ethical questions are being raised. So if you look at the smart society, by and large, you're looking at the confluence of two very large factors. One is the computing speed has, processing speed has gone down, is likely to go down further if quantum computers and qubits start coming in and quantum communications start coming in. And on the other side, you've got biotechnology. Now we can do gene editing through CRISPR, and the confluence of biotechnology and information technology is going to really lead to, complemented by AI and machine learning and all, that's going to completely reorganize society again. And again, there are questions regarding what are the right things to do, what are not right things to do, how does the world organize itself. And I think one thing I'll suggest is, there was this speech made by Boris Johnson in the latest UN, which got taken by a bit of laughter, the way he delivered. But his point was absolutely right. He said, for all of human history, we have had technology where we were the masters and the technology was our servant. Now we are ushering in a world where the technology will be the master, and then what happens to us? And how do we organize ourselves to understand what are the ethics, the principles, the morals, the laws that will govern that interaction? Elon Musk, another person who is at the frontier of this, is someone worth listening to. And he's going in with concept like Neuralink. He said, well, you will have the singularity, as you call it, technology singularity. Human brains will become outcompeted by technology. What is the way for human societies to come integrate with the machine? So that's why he's working on things like Neuralink, where through interface between the human mind and the technological world, you can then unlock and become far more productive and become one with the online world. Again, there are ethical issues regarding that. So I think these are interesting times, and if you just break those down, a couple of dualities that come out, which I think are very interesting in the way the world will shape up. One is, with all this progress and prosperity that's come in this world, what we have is a situation where the biological needs of human beings have been really well managed, right? So life expectancy, infant mortality, per capita income, all have risen globally. But what we find is that the psychological needs of human beings, that is something where we have more and more of a crisis. So mental health issues have gone up considerably. 25% of women, school-going girls in the UK now self-harm. That's not something which is trivialized. And as technology comes in, I think it's having an impact on our families. We all see, even around dinner tables, we're all on our phones, and the more connected we've become, the more isolated we've become as well. So I think that's a duality which is going to be really interesting to figure out. Secondly, you've got issues with regards to how truth is evolving. So going back, scaling up of trust has been absolutely critical. And now we have systems which rely more and more on truth, the latest one being blockchain, where you don't even need a centralized authority figure to disband truth. But now, on the other side, you have the rise of fake news and information wars and whatnot, and fake news travels 6 times faster. You've got social media platforms which are looking at engagement. And now what is happening is that the trust in systems has gone up, which is what facilitated global trade. But trust within society is I think, which is a problem. How much does society belong together? And what we see is that evidence of that is a political spectrum. The middle has fallen out, and people have become a lot more entrenched in extremist views. So I think that's another duality which needs to be looked at. The third duality which comes in is people versus planet. All this prosperity has brought about the 6th greatest mass extinction that this world is dealing with. We have people who need prosperity because obviously, providing essential products, services, rights to markets, finance is absolutely critical. But obviously it's having this tremendous impact on the environment, and the biological capacity for us to manage that is becoming more and more constrained. So how do we deal with that duality? What are the choices to be made on that front become really important? And the last duality which becomes important is that as economies have become more prosperous, those economies have very different demographics. So the aging and shrinking population, total fertility rate in advanced economies is less than 2.1, which means that those economies are getting, demographics are getting stretched. Whereas in other parts of the world, our parts of the world, you have a growing population. So again, you have those dualities about what works for one society may not work for another society. So I think these are some of the challenges that the world will need to face which is why I think in terms of the possible spectrum of outcomes, you can have a very prosperous world because you have tools, technologies, and resources that never before. But you also have these challenges which if we don't figure out as a society how to deal with, then those same tools, technologies could then be used for some very, very disastrous outcomes because technology is amoral, right? It doesn't have any morality. Morality comes from human beings. I think that's something that is going to be really, really important. I would define leadership.
Great. Some of you introduced concepts of dualities, but you dwell quite a bit on building a trust-based societies and people developing more trust on systems rather than possibly individuals and even societies. You also spoke about the pace of change from one society 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0, etc. And I can relate to it. I mean, my eldest son is 31 years and my youngest is 15. And my eldest son tells me I can't relate to my youngest one. The pace of change and how generations are evolving is so incredible that human beings have never seen anything like that. And in that, how to balance concepts of trust, ethics, purpose are extremely important, but also how we develop capabilities to be ready for it. Right. So, for example, I mean, you shared one interesting stats with me. World Economic Forum says by 2025 we will lose 86 million jobs, which are rooted in the old ways of working. But that's a bad news. But the good news is that 97 million new jobs will be created by 2025. Now, are we ready for it? So the question I ask is our education system, and of course we talk about Pakistan, but also in the global context, is our education system gearing up to be producing the kind of skills that we need for tomorrow and Society 5.0? Do we have the kind of leadership which can handle this pace of change? Are we building a society where trust in people remains deep-rooted and an ethical, purpose-led organization culture or country culture evolves? So just your take on leadership, societies, individuals, and our education system, of course, in the context of Pakistan, but also globally.
So a whole bunch of very tough questions,
Yeah.
which I don't think anyone really has answers to. But from my understanding, education systems themselves were really created for the industrial revolution, right? So mass-produce people for particular jobs, and they would go into jobs where they would have lifelong security and working under unions and whatnot. So clearly, the education system for the information age and especially for the digital age is something which is very difficult to manage, because it kind of goes back to something we were talking about, that the pace of change is shrinking so much, but your schooling is still 16, 17, 18 years. So that 16, 18 years is a lifetime, right? So how do you actually come up with an anti-fragile way of continuing to develop capabilities? I don't have good answers to, but clearly it is a challenge. But also complemented by that, I think on a personal level, how to be a good parent is damn hard for me. I struggle about what my kids are accessing, what their friends are saying, how to manage information and whatnot. It's a problem, right? Because how do you inculcate in them the ability to develop meaningful relationships, to develop character and values in this ever rapid world is very difficult. So if anybody's got some good ideas on that, I'm very keen to explore that further. But as an institute, in a corporate world, what we find is that the capitalism has been a tremendously powerful force for change, brought about economic prosperity. But the downside has been that there are a whole bunch of externalities which have not been priced in, which now the markets are trying to figure out how to price them in. One of them is carbon dioxide, right? So formation of carbon markets, better reporting in terms of plastics. These are all things that the world is struggling with, but it's very difficult to have standard reporting that span across various industries in various times. But the three major markets, the financial markets, the market for talent, and the market for products and services, you can see changes happening on all those three fronts. So when Larry Fink from BlackRock comes in and says we're moving away from shareholder value to stakeholder value, that's a very profound statement given the trillions of dollars that BlackRock has under management. What that world looks like, I think there are conversations which are being had. Uh, I know you are a big proponent of capability based on purpose. Labor markets, good people want to work with companies which have a purpose that aligns with them, right? So their psychological returns are being valued more than just financial returns. And the third element in terms of products and services, consumers also want to buy products and services that they have affinity with, psychological affinity with. But again, I think the problem is that the future is distributed, but it's distributed unevenly. So we still have people in various 2.0, 3.0, 4.0s, and they're different markets, right? So for purpose-driven businesses, it's very important to understand what the state of readiness is for each one of those three markets, and hence understand what are the long-term versus short-term trade-off one needs to make in order to have purpose, right? So Khalid Bhai is here. Engro, in Engro, Pakistaniyat is already core to the culture of the company. All we did was to make it explicit and to make sure that the decision-making systems that we have continue to perpetuate. So one of the changes we made was we had a system which was only based on outcomes. We've shifted that to now 50% of people's pay and reward is based on how you achieve those. So how did you behave? Did you display good manners? Did you display good values? Where did you put people first? And I think that's something, did you give back to society? These are the things that we are now bringing in to the way we develop leaders and the way we compensate leaders. But it is hard. It is hard work. And culture change is always hard, right? Sam Walton said it took him 21 years to become an overnight sensation. People don't see the effort it takes in the system in order to get there. So one project I'm very proud of, which we're developing, which is a PDH, which is polydehydrogenation project, which is polypropylene. So polypropylene is a very important material, but it has massive downsides. Plastic pollution is huge. So what we're doing is, I think we're developing the project, but it will be the first project will be carbon neutral day one, which has never been done before. And also there's going to be a substantial amount of money spent every single year to bring about offsetting and circularity as far as plastics is concerned. So you get the benefit of providing the essential product material, but create an ecosystem that reduces the impacts of that as much as possible. So I think those are the examples of how purpose can translate into action on the ground.
It's always delightful for me to hear young leader talking about purpose, which is why we exist rather than what we exist for. And I do see, as we move along, many organizations have actually moved one step up, where previously we were talking about vision, mission, values, but they've kind of added purpose as a core thing which drives the culture of the organization. Do you think, given given the nature of Society 5.0, which is rooted into cloud infrastructure, building a fusion with physical infrastructure, do you think there is room for transforming organizations and countries' culture towards purpose rather than towards pure materialistic thing?
Again, that's a really good question. So I think for us, being a lot more purpose-led is also easier because we're fortunate enough that, as I mentioned, we have a good starting base, which we just need to make more explicit and change decision-making. But also, we're fortunate enough that we have capital resources at play, so we can make those short-term trade-offs for that longer term. A lot of people, when you're starting out and all, it's a lot harder. You don't have the resources to do so. So I think hearing from them and how younger companies or younger entrepreneurs can actually live their purpose is something which is, I think, even more impressive than for us, which is far easier given where we are, right? So I think absolutely, one thing which is true is that more and more markets will reward purpose-driven, value-based companies which are solving meaningful problems. More and more. I think that's a fantastic change. And hence that sets it up for some interesting conversation. One of the big variables is what is the environment in which those companies are operating. We just heard Khalid Mansoor Saab talk about him coming in and talking to the Chinese and creating that enabling environment. What is he talking about? He's talking about building trust, right? Effectively, that's what he's talking about. So if the more society is there where people trust intellectual property or contract enforcement or law enforcement, people to be capable, academia to give good quality talent, the more trust there is, the easier it gets for corporations to become a lot more purpose-led. So I think that's something that is interesting for us to focus more on.
I mean, that's brilliant. And I do believe very strongly that we have an opportunity with Society 5.0 to leapfrog our corporations' leadership style from very quarterly money driven to how are we achieving our purpose targets every quarter, every month, every single day. And sorry, more and more organization will move towards it. And I actually, in my view, we do see manifestation of it today. And COVID, of course, has been a big challenge, but in many ways, it has brought a lot of good changes in the way we think, in the way we operate. And for countries like Pakistan, it has accelerated the pace of change. Think about working from anywhere in Pakistan 18 months ago. If I would have said it, कहते पागल है, ये पाकिस्तान है इधर ये हो ही नहीं सकता, ये आज हो गया. So working from anywhere is actually a reality, giving people flexibility to come and go when they want to. That has happened in Pakistan in many organizations and continues to happen as we go along. So it is a great opportunity for us to possibly leapfrog on some of the lost decades and go to the next stage. But I want to bring in another dimension again, which is the leadership dimension. Now, leadership of today has handled what we call the baby bloomers, people of my time, old-fashioned, not fast-moving, not dynamic, no problem with morality for many, to a generation which is completely different. And the generation is right here. I mean, we have millennials and Gen Zs now in the organization. They are blending with the bloomers, and leaders are the bloomers who possibly do not even relate to the millennials and the Gen Z and taking care of their needs. And are they going to adjust their leadership style to make sure that they build an organization for tomorrow rather than carrying on with an organization of yesterday? So how do you see this duality? And since you touched upon the duality aspect quite a bit in your initial comment, how do you see the duality between the leadership, and what in your view leaders need to be doing today? It doesn't matter which generation they belong to be sure that they stay future relevant.
So I rely on people like Khalid Mansoor who are far better leaders than I am to figure those things out. I can just share a personal experience, not to use it as advice or anything. I think because the world is getting more and more complicated, the demands of leadership are becoming a lot more. And I think that earlier leaders tended to come across as being the source of, I know what's going on, and they exude confidence and, certainty and clarity on what needs to be done and how it's supposed to be done more and more. I think those things are changing because for me personally, I had to make a choice whether I'm going to embrace vulnerability or not. And I said, you know what, it is something that I need to get over my insecurity and be vulnerable and tell people, I don't know what I'm talking about or what to do. I know why to do something. I don't know what to do it and how to do it. And let's just figure it out, because it's a search for truth. I don't know what the answer is. Nobody knows what the answer is, but together maybe we can figure out what the answer is, and then enable, empower, and just bank on younger talent. And for me, at least in my experience, that has worked wonderfully well. I'm not sitting there saying we'll work for everybody or there's not a better way of doing it. But I think human beings fundamentally are human beings. They want to engage. They want to feel good about themselves and the life that they're living, and knowing that they're doing the best with their time. And now if the demands for that time are becoming a lot more, then organizations need to adapt by delayering, having more open conversations, bringing in the psychological barriers, treating people as human beings and not as human resources. So even small things in Engro we did was we changed it from CHRO to CPO, people organization. These are small things, because if I call somebody a resource, I'm just saying you're there for economic value. So it becomes a transactional relationship. Or they're saying, okay, I need money from you, and we're saying, I just need your capability and your time. No, we spend our waking hours with people that we work with more than our own families. Why can't we create much more people-centric conversations and then figure out how to create systems that perpetuate that trust moving forward, right? I think that's it's hard, especially hard for us because, when companies are good at doing things in a certain way and delivering successful products and services, change is really hard, right? As you mentioned, it takes a crisis to change, and you gave a really good example of COVID. I think engineering that sense of urgency when things are good, I think that becomes the biggest challenge to overcome.
Excellent. And, Society 5.0 gives us an opportunity to be more humanistic in our approach. And I personally believe the Gen Z only relates to it. Hence, we don't have a choice. As leaders, we need to move in that direction. Just, as we are coming to an end, your last comment. Uh, where are, where do you see us in the journey towards Society 5.0? Where are we today?
I don't think it's a simple answer because you have pockets of people already more closer to 5.0. In Pakistan, you have people in 2.0 in agricultural societies, right? So because there is such a large uneven distribution of where are we in terms of society, it's not a simple answer. It depends on the region, depends on the people.
Yeah, and sorry, I completely agree with that. So with that, we comes to an end. I hope people got an idea about what is Society 5.0 with the cloud infrastructure and fusion of physical infrastructure, how it will bring about a new world where Internet of Things, bringing a lot of data into the cloud, where AI and machine learning will start to make decisions for you, but it doesn't mean will replace you. As long as you're okay to move and reskill yourself, meeting the demands of Society 5.0. Once again, Samad, always a pleasure interacting with you. Thank you so very much. Round of applause. Thank you.